Thanks, former Representative Wilson. The House will come to order. Please join Representative Baisley in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile. Rep. Amabile's excused Bacon. Oh, she just came in. Okay. Rep. Bacon. Representative Bacon's excused Baisley. Benavidez. Burnett. Byrd. Bockenfeld. Basenecker. Bradfield. Caraveo. Carver. Catlin. Cutter. Doherty. Rep. Doherty's excused Duran. Oh. Esgar. Exum. Froelich. Rep. Froelich's excused. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. I don't see her, sorry. Gray's here. Hanks. Herod.
Here.
Holtorf. Hooten is excused. Judah. Kennedy. Kip. Larson. Lindsay. Lantine. Here. Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin. Michael Sinjane. Mullica. No Mullica. Representative Mullica is excused. Neville. Ortiz. Pelton. Pico. Ransom. Rich. Ricks. Representative Ricks is excused. Roberts. Sandridge.
Here.
Sirota. Out here. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. I think Tipper's excused. Titone. Valdez A. Rep. Valdez A is excused. Valdez D. Van Beber is present. Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Williams.
Here.
Woodrow. Woog. Young. Mr. Speaker.
There's a ton of them like that. Huh? No, all these. There's tons of scary movies, and they're all about creepy houses. Oh, I don't know. Could be. There's so many movies out there with haunted houses.
With 61 present, 4 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Holtorf.
Mr. Speaker, with a spirit of happiness and hope this beautiful spring day, I move that the Journal of Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Representative Holtorf. I couldn't agree more with that motion. But members, the motion before us is the adoption of the journal as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. It's not even Friday yet, but the ayes clearly have it and the motion is approved. Announcements and introductions. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs will be meeting upon adjournment in LSBA to hear Senate Bill 11.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if it's Thursday, it is finance, and this is for all of the friends and fans of finance. We will be meeting today upon adjournment. When we do adjourn, I'll come up and make another announcement to let you know precisely the time. But today we will be hearing House Bill 22-1298 and House Bill 1127. The first bill up will be House Bill 1298, even though the calendar is printed otherwise. Thanks.
Representative McLaughlin.
Oh, go ahead.
He's asking tall people first. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Education Committee, if you look on your calendar, today it is correct. We've made all the corrections this week, and today we are meeting at 1:30, 107. Thanks.
Representative A. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of Energy and Environment, just a reminder that we have no committee this week. The poor Earth.
Representative Roberts. Yeah, Representative McCormick and Representative Catlin.
All right, can we come down?
Sure.
You and I both are like.
Yeah.
Representative Catlin, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you again today.
Honor to serve with you today as well, Representative Catlin.
Thank you. I don't think your mic's on. I didn't hear that very good.
It is an honor to serve with you today, Representative Catlin.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You've made my day. So I'm down here to help make your night.
This is important.
Hey, if you're hungry, you ought to listen up.
Members, let's keep the conversations to a minimum. I know people are excited that Representative Wilson's here, but please direct your attention to the well.
Well, it is a special day to have Representative Wilson here. I channeled him the other day when I needed help in making a decision. I don't think he heard that, but maybe he'll take the credit. But seriously, tonight is a very special night. It's something that we used to do on an annual basis, and with the disruptions that we've had in our community and in our society in the last couple of years, it fell by the wayside. But I'm happy to announce, and Representative McCormick is happy to announce, that we're going to start that tradition again. It's something I don't think some of you haven't been here don't realize. But this is something we've always tried to do, and that's a steak fry for all of us together for supper tonight. Over at the First Baptist Church across the street. This is one of those nights where you can take off your badge and you can come and have fun. You can sit down and eat supper with people that you have something in common and with people that you've never met before. Agriculture puts this on for us. It's a simple way of saying, hey, take a look at what we do. Honestly, Colorado produces the best beef in the world. People come to buy our beef. They come to buy our chilies. They come to buy our sweet corn. Some of them eat chilies down here on the floor. The point is our geographic location up here at the top of the world produces things that the rest of the world have envy of. Our hot days and our cold nights make sweet corn sweeter. Something about eating wildflowers makes beef taste better. The lamb that are up in the mountains, when they come down, you won't believe the taste of those lambs. Colorado has had a worldwide reputation for everything from peaches to lamb. So tonight, if you have an opportunity, please come. It starts around 6 p.m. I think I stole all of McCormick's talk, but anyway, I get carried away waxing poetic about eating wildflowers. But one of the things I wanted to say, you can tell I don't eat wildflowers. Okay? I don't. But I wanted to say this. I have the greatest respect for people who can coax a living up out of the ground on an annual basis. And this is something that you can come and help us do, is to give a hat tip to the people that produce this kind of food in this kind of world that makes sure that you and I are secure every day with what we do and where we eat and what we eat. Please come tonight. The Logan County cattlewomen are cooking, so you ought to just take that into consideration. They really do a good job. Thank you. See you there tonight.
Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Representative Catlin. I want to echo everything he said and also to add that perhaps wildflowers are tasty. I think the people of Boulder County probably would love to eat some wildflowers. And also what's important about steak night tonight is at the very bottom it says they're going to have all the trimmings. So you all know what all that means. That means all the potatoes, all the corn, all the fruit, all the veggies, and perhaps some wildflowers on the side. So I hope to see you all there, 6 o'clock at the Baptist Church. Please come.
Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to emphasize Logan County Cattlewomen. That organization is in my district. Those ladies know how to do up a feed. So come on over tonight and eat well.
Representative Holtorf.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, you may not know this, but we raise some of the best, if not the best, beef in Logan County. You have the unique opportunity tonight to eat the beef that we raise in my backyard. We're very proud of what we do out in cattle country, and I want to personally invite all of you to join us tonight. And the Logan County cattlewomen, if you think about it, have gone to great effort post-COVID to put this on. And the Baptist Church is, I think, just right over here, not even half a block away. So please be there and help us close the rural-urban divide.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you. I just wanted to remind all the hunters in the chamber here and those that have family members that are big game hunters that your big game applications are due April 5th. Don't wait till the deadline. Get it done now. Thank you.
Honor to serve with you too, Representative Bull. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Business Affairs and Labor Committee, we are meeting this afternoon at 1:30. We have 3 bills. It's a slightly different order today than it was yesterday. We're going in the order of 1282, 1152, and then finishing with 1277.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an honor to serve here with you.
Honor to serve with you too.
Folks, you got to hear him pray, but I would certainly love it if you would welcome our former member, Jim Wilson, back to the House. Part of the reason why we embrace people like Jim who come back here is because they make us better. They make us better as people, but they make us better as a body. because they look at something far more than what we are here. So, Jim, welcome back. We love you, and thank you for giving us your morning.
Best announcement of the day. All right, seeing no further announcements and or introductions, the next order of business is special orders, second reading of bills. Representative Ortiz.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House now resolve itself into committee of the whole for consideration of special orders.
Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Ortiz will take the chair.
All right. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader. And of course, the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 22-1295.
House Bill 1295 by Representatives Sirota and Garnett, also Senators Buckner and Fenberg, concerning the Department of Early Childhood and in connection therewith establishing the duties of the Department of Early Childhood and the Executive Director of the Department, relocating early childhood programs from the Department of Human Services and Education to the Department of Early Childhood and creating the Colorado Universal Preschool Program.
Representative Sirota.
We have to move it one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1295 as amended.
As a proper motion to the bill. Mr. Speaker Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, sir.
Members, we had some discussion on this bill yesterday, and we decided to lay it over a day. We've had great conversations across the aisle. Again, this is a very important bill to help make sure that our kiddos across the state can get access to the early childhood education that we all know will help set them up to be successful years down the road. So I would urge an aye vote on House Bill 1295.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just add that we have this unique opportunity here before us in creating this new state department. We are doing something truly transformational. We are doing something to create efficiencies. We are doing something to create a better experience for our families, for our providers, and everyone engaged in the early childhood ecosystem. And I'm excited to keep talking about it, so I will let my friends have a chance to ask some questions. But I ask for your support and your aye vote.
The question before the committee is the passage of House Bill 22-1295. Is there any further discussion? Assistant Minority Leader Geithner. And Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, as we look at the funding mechanism specifically for 1295, the voters obviously voted in EE. And there is a direct correlation, I believe, as it pertains to a piece of legislation that's already working its way through the General Assembly, and that's House Bill 1064. So with that, I move L040 and ask that it be displayed.
Oh, do you want me to talk to it, or do you want?
Yeah. I'll just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the amendment has been properly moved and displayed. Oh, Paul. There we go. Now it's been properly moved and displayed. Representative Soper, please tell us about the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
So what Amendment L040 does is it changes the date for when this bill would take effect to see if House Bill 1064 actually passes. And part of that is because 1064 is the flavored tobacco and vaping ban. And so what would happen here is if 1064 passes, because what's tied to this is the funding mechanism for pre-K, as we're setting up this department, all of a sudden we'd have at least 400 million that would be leaving what we're creating here. And so the two are actually working against each other. And so our amendment would give a delay of 1 year so that the General Assembly could figure out how our long-term funding mechanism would look like to be able to create the Department of Early Childhood Education.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to put a finer point on it, members, the idea here is that if 1064 was to pass, the tax implication or the revenue implication that may have, it would delay 1295 by 1 year so that we could figure this out as the state tries to fund this new department. So would appreciate your support for L040.
All right, the question before us is Amendment L040. Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to speak in support of this amendment as well, folks. I know that there will be some controversy over the funding based on House Bill 1064 that is currently in our drawers and working its way through the House. It has not gone to the Senate yet. There may still be amendments on that. But if that does pass, that really will mean that the funding for this bill will not be there anymore. I hope that you guys saw the fiscal note dated, the revised fiscal note dated March 23rd. It replaces the fiscal note dated March 21st. So you will probably have pink sheets in your folders that, but make sure you have the correct one. You're right. This year, it is a very small, impact on the budget. But the out year, we see some very large fiscal impacts for this should 1295 pass. And so I just want to make sure that you and us, the JBC, but you as representatives of your districts are recognizing that we are right now looking at a bill that could upend much of the financial planning that we see happening, because bills that are working against each other are problematic. And each fiscal note is a standalone fiscal note. So please keep that in mind too. The fiscal notes are written to current law. 1064 is not law yet, but it is in our files and working its way. It's past committee. So I really hope that you all will take into account the fact that we should not be starting new departments, new divisions, new services for the state without the ability to look beyond this year. The current, as I mentioned, the current year is not overwhelming for money, but we need to look at the out years too. That is why our fiscal analysts give us the out years and the projections, and I really hope that you all will take a look at the revised fiscal note dated March 23rd and vote yes on this amendment.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, Representative Holtorf.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are working at growing government. We are working at creating a department that in the out years, according to this fiscal note, is $136.8 million. So I'm just going to call it 140 using cowboy math. And it may grow In fact, I fully expect if we have the same trajectory I have seen that the times I have been serving House District 64, I have seen the trajectory of growth in state government only go upward. Now, in the first year, it doesn't appear to be a problem. But I want to point out how my assistant minority leader so carefully studied this bill that he noticed what some of you in the big town call a conundrum. You have a funding stream over here that provides a majority of those dollars from the tax on tobacco sales. This is a significant amount of money. But then downstream, we're saying we're going to hamper that and take that away for whatever reasons we may think. But then we're going to create an department, hundreds of millions of dollars, that's supposed to ride on the back of the funding stream that you're wanting to take away and minimize. Well, where I'm from, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know if the bill sponsors have looked out that far. I don't know if the fiscal analysts and economists have studied that. Maybe they're just relying on the revenue and the money to just keep coming in, which may be a good bet in the short term. But what happens when we go into recession? Not if we go into recession. I don't want to give the economics class again. When we go into recession, what happens in the state of Colorado? What happens to those tax streams that now are choked down across every tax revenue source? And then what happens to programs like this? When they do not get the funding, when they don't have the appropriation. So I'm very cautious. I ask the bill sponsors to listen to not only my assistant minority leader, but our JBC representative, who is very astute and knowledgeable and really understands the financial calculus that goes into funding state government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for the discussion on L040. There is a connection, obviously, between bills that are in the legislative process, and it doesn't happen all the time. This is a unique instance. However, I would urge a no vote on this particular amendment because pushing out, again, we have to make sure that we are abiding by the will of the voters and what happened with Prop EE. The legislation that's been referenced that is referenced in the amendment is still in the middle of the legislative process. So we don't want to make decisions on one bill in relation to another bill. So I would just urge a no vote, but I hear where people are coming from, and I think I appreciate the discussion.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L040? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L040. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The noes have it. Amendment L040 is lost. To the bill. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. So, an issue was brought to my attention related to the data collection in this bill. And so on page 27 of the bill, it says that at a minimum, the department shall collect data pertaining to early childhood and family support programs and services that includes A, the number of children in the state who are eligible to receive and the number of children who actually receive services through the programs administered by the department. The demographics of said children, including socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, language, and disability, and said children's eligibility for funding and use of early childhood and family support programs and services, information concerning groups of children who have historically encountered barriers to social readiness, information that enables the department, local coordinating organizations, and local and tribal agencies to assess on a continuing basis the needs for early childhood and family support programs and services in an area and make decisions concerning the provision of programs and services, the demand for early childhood and family support programs and services, and the existence of providers in areas throughout the state. And it continues to go on for multiple pages, all of this data that is to be collected. The concern that has been raised is that the definition of eligible child means any child who is eligible to receive preschool services as provided in this section. And so my question to the bill sponsors is how is this data going to be collected for every child? So in other words, this isn't just gathering data on those children whose parents have chosen to participate in this program. This is collecting data on all of the kids who could possibly participate in this program. And so I'd like to understand the mechanism by which we're, as the state, going to be gathering this kind of information on all of the kids within our communities. I'd also like to understand why that's important if we have families who don't want to participate, why the state needs data on them. So if you could help me answer that question, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the question. This is, it's showing the need to understand whether or not we are being responsive in this new department. So it's gathering data, statewide data, like we do pretty much for any other program, to make sure we are serving the people who are intended, to make sure we don't have gaps and missing people, making sure we're reaching our rural children, making sure that we are reaching underserved children. So it's really nothing strange. I think it's just good government in terms of making sure that we are knowing that we are doing what we say we're doing, and we're doing it right for everyone.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. And I appreciate that, and I understand that part. What I'm really trying to figure out is the mechanism by which this data is going to be collected. We're talking a 2-year period, so we're not looking
Representative
at
Luck, one moment, please, not to interrupt. Members, please take your discussions off to the side or out of the chamber. It's getting a little bit loud in here. There's some good debate happening at the well, so please keep your attention at the well. So, Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. So we're not talking about census data, because that would be already outdated by the time we would get that, because it's just every 10 years. So how are we collecting, how under this bill is the state going to collect this data of these kids? How do we even know that they exist? Is this going to be like different community groups are going to go door to door and do some sort of a survey? What does that look like? Are we going to base it, if you could just help me understand.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think it looks any different than the way we do it for any other program. You know, on page 25 where it starts, it just talks about how the department is going to work with the local coordinating organizations, which are the entities that will be responsible for ensuring we have a mixed delivery system, so working with community providers. So I'm sure that there can be information gleaned from all of our community providers, as well as our school districts, other state agencies, the local and tribal agencies, just to make sure that everybody, and we're talking about qualitative and quantitative information. So trying to gather information about, you know, how many available seats do you have? Who are you serving? How long are your wait lists? These are all, I think, good and important questions that we should be able to get through communication and participation with the department. I don't see anything written in there about a door-to-door survey or doing anything out of the ordinary that all other agencies and programs do to ensure that we're justifying use of taxpayer dollars and that we're doing it well, doing it right.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. I'm not questioning the why here. I'm questioning the how, and I guess I'm just not well versed enough in understanding how this data is collected for these other programs to where every eligible child would be encapsulated in that data collection. And so that's what I'm just trying to figure out, is how that happens. And so. So if there's nothing in the bill in terms of the mechanism, that would just be left to rulemaking is the suggestion. Okay. My other question, there is some sections, and I can pull them up, I don't have it right here, that relate to aggregated data and non-aggregated data. And so I just would like to understand the security protections for that non-aggregated data that the state might be collecting with this program.
Any further discussion? Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And something the bill sponsor said earlier struck me. It's just government. It's just government. This data that's collected will go into a database. And I'm sure it will become metadata for every child, young child in the state. Ironically, it's not just for the ones participating in the program. It's for everybody in the state. Now, I was here earlier talking about how much data does the state need? How much data, how much information about everybody do they need? Do they need all the data? Do they need to know everything about everybody with respect to this? I will tell you, in eastern Colorado, in House District 64, my constituents are very concerned with what the state does and what the state does with their data. And if it becomes metadata throughout their lives, how is that used either to, quote, help them, or, quote, perhaps hinder them, or, quote, control them? That's an important question here. And I know there was a book written years ago. I can't remember the title. It was a year, maybe 1984. I know that Big Brother wanted to watch everything and everybody in that book. So there's a problem as we want to collect data on everything and everybody everywhere. And I will tell you, Colorado is concerned. Coloradoans are concerned about this. So I think my colleague, Representative Luck, brings some very good points. Now, she asks, how is the data going to be collected? Well, my question to the bill sponsors is, why do we need all the data on everybody? On every kiddo in this state? All the way to Sugar City, all the way to Hasty, all the way to Holly, all the way to Campo. Really?
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. So I am concerned about the way that this might develop in rulemaking. And so I am going to move this amendment for consideration. So I move L041 and ask kindly that it be displayed. So all this does is ensure...
Representative Luck, if you would hold on one moment.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, that is a proper motion, and L041 has been displayed. To the amendment, Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm putting this forth. As we know, data collection is big business in our world these days. You can do a lot with data collection, and it just concerns me that we would start at age 3 in terms of collecting data about our people. And so I would ask that we put into the bill a requirement that says that no data can be collected without the express written permission of parents, so that they understand what is being gathered, for what purpose it's being gathered, and to what ends it will be used. I ask for a favorable vote. Thanks.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I rise in support of this amendment as well. You know, Parents in the driver's seat, I think, is always an important piece, and it's a fundamental piece when it comes to the education of the kids across Colorado. And certainly, as a parent myself, being in that driver's seat, I think, is the key role that I play, as well as my wife. And so I think this amendment here simply says, hey, parents, we're going to make sure that you have information about the data. We're going to make sure that we have your consent on data surrounding your child. But without that consent, of course, then the state will stay out of it. So I rise in full support of this amendment, and I would ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this discussion. This is certainly a topic that throughout my legislative career I have talked a lot about with K-12 and with the department, and an issue that we have had lengthy discussions in this well about. Though I still urge a no vote on this amendment, I understand where the concerns are coming from. I think the way that it's drafted, it's very prescriptive. There is going to be a robust process that's going to include stakeholders from across the state, which again, this process up until this point has included stakeholders from every region, from all walks of life, to make sure that we would get to this place and move forward with these recommendations. And so as the new department goes through this rulemaking process to set up how everything's going to be working, I am confident that this discussion is going to come up. But I appreciate the conversation. It's certainly one that I care deeply about, and I know everyone does.
Any further discussion on L041? Representative Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I encourage a strong yes vote on this amendment. We have to actually look at what's happening in the world and what's going to be happening in the future. Cybersecurity is becoming a major issue. And now we're talking about taking data on our youngest kids from early on ages that have no control, and now all of a sudden this data is compromised and gets into the hands of people that shouldn't get their hands into. And the least we can do here is to actually inform the parents and get their written consent before this data is collected. I urge a strong yes vote.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while I can appreciate that the sponsors are confident that this data would be safeguarded and whatnot, I just don't have that same level of confidence. I believe putting the parents in the driver's seat is absolutely essential. That's exactly what this amendment does, and I would urge a yes vote.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard the words of the bill sponsor earlier about that it'll be discussed, it'll be analyzed. I'm sure it'll be given the greatest consideration. But what does that mean? I don't know. But I do know that this amendment right here, puts parents where parents need to be. And one of the things Colorado is crying out for is for parents to be in charge of raising their kids and to know what's happening with their children, particularly in school. Even at the youngest ages, they want to know what their kids are doing, what their kids are learning, what their kids are being exposed to. This message rings loud and clear, and it should ring loud and clear in this chamber. And this amendment is so simple. It simply states that if a parent doesn't want their kids' data collected, which is already precedence on so many things, if you don't want your data in the database, you can opt out. If parents don't want their kids' information in some metadatabase in a State Department repository, they in turn should have that right to opt out. This is about parents' rights, Colorado. This is about parents' rights simply. I ask for an aye vote, and I think that the bill sponsors should understand how simple this amendment is and put the parents first. Put the parents first, because the parents, it's their children. They're the parents. And Colorado is crying out to put us parents first.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're talking about the number of children, not individual children. And the goal here is to understand whether or not this program is responsive. whether or not the communities are actually building up the number of spaces in their pre-K programs in order to serve all families, to make sure that all families are being served equitably. We're aggregating data. We have census data that's updated via the ACS annually. We're not tracking everyone. We're just making sure that this program is responsive, and I ask for a no vote.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I rise in support of this amendment. I don't know how many times in the 4 years that I've been here that we have taken parents' rights away because it just seems like some of these bills just think the schools know better than for the children. And just getting permission from the parents, that's not asking a whole lot. And this is going to be a new level of bureaucracy that hasn't even been created, and I know that you use the words I'm confident, I'm sure, I hope, I maybe, but let's support the parents at least once. Let's just support the parents. Let's support this amendment.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, it just dawned on me, I did an update on my iPad here, and in the process, there was an app. Members, you can't even install an app on your device without consenting to the user agreement. And if you look in the user agreement, there's oftentimes a segment in there about data collected. And so even when we download apps to our phones, which are free, we are asked, there's some sort of an informed consent basically saying, hey, there's going to be potential data here collected. Do you agree? This certainly with our kids makes a lot of sense to me. If we expect it on apps for our phone, then certainly we should expect it when it comes to setting up a new department and the education of our kids. The other point that I want to make is this. I referenced yesterday that the Joint Information Technology Committee reviewed the proposal for the new department, and that proposal said that they were requesting funding for 3 years. Well, the implementation plan, when reviewed by the Joint Information Technology Committee, found that it was the committee found that it was lacking and said, you know what, we're going to push back a little bit. We're not going to fund it for 3 years automatically. We're going to fund it for 1 year. And oh, by the way, we'll fund it for that first year because you don't have your implementation plan built out. We're going to ask you to come in and see us once a month for that entire first year. Now, the reason for that, folks, is because, well, the Joint Information Technology Committee understands that this is not prime or ready for prime time so far. So if the Joint Information Technology Committee is not comfortable and they are pumping the brakes, as it were, then certainly this amendment makes a lot of sense here as we look at the data that would potentially be collected on our youth. And so I think some form of an informed consent, like I said, that we would have when it comes to the apps that we provide or download onto our phones, certainly informing parents that data is going to be collected and allowing them the opportunity to say, you know what, I consent to that. I think that makes a lot of sense, and especially in light of the Joint Information Technologies Committee's report, which said, you know what, 3 years is just not appropriate. Your implementation plan is just not quite ready. We'll give you a year, and we're going to monitor you once a month for that first year. So seems like the Joint Information Technology Committee has some concerns here, and certainly as it pertains to data, I dang sure have some concerns. So please support this amendment. Thank you.
Members, it's getting loud again, this too, so please keep your attention at the well, keep your voices down, and take your extraneous conversations outside of the room, please. Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honored to serve with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just heard about the Joint Technology Committee. It's all it is Joint Technology Committee. You could leave off the information part. But thank you for paying attention to what we do in the committee because we do hope that more people do listen to about that. But there was some information that really wasn't accurate about that. I wanted to just clear that up. The Joint Technology Committee hears a lot of IT projects. We want to make sure that the taxpayer money is spent appropriately. and we ask for a lot of projects to be heard and come back to our committee for oversight because we're spending a lot of money. And it didn't have anything to do with the fact that it was this particular education project. We did that with DPA. We do that with a whole bunch of other things. Anytime there's a lot of money on the line, we'd stand up and say, no, we want to make sure the money's being spent right, because there have been a lot of bad projects, so we spent a lot of money and they didn't go right. And we want to make sure that the people have oversight over that. The people, being the elected officials on that committee, have oversight of those projects for the money that people spend in IT. So I appreciate my colleagues' comments about the Joint Technology Committee's oversight, but some inconsistencies there, and I wanted to point that out.
Any further discussion? Mr. Speaker Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate this discussion. I just want to be clear. We're talking about aggregate data here, and so similar to the school finance formula, other areas where we're trying to identify how many resources to move. At any point, if it's not aggregate data, there are robust privacy protections that follow all of the most stringent state and federal laws in regard to that. So again, I care about this just as much as everybody else with 3 young kiddos, but again, the aggregate data will help move resources where they need to go, similar to what we do with the 178 school districts. And if there's ever any difference than that, the most robust privacy protections are in place. So I would still urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I continue to urge an aye vote on this amendment. This amendment puts parents in the position they need to be placed in. Now, if you want aggregate data, how about you just use the enrollment? The enrollment is aggregate data. You know how many kiddos are in the program, and there you go. You want to fund something? Just like our public schools, you have the enrollment. Funding is based on the enrollment. Somehow we navigate that every year without having to, and maybe they do, I don't know. I'd ask the bill sponsors. Are we doing metadata on everything and everybody in every particular category you can think of as we try to build databases to analyze statistically everything about everybody to solve all the problems, perceived or real? I would argue that this puts parents first, and that's what the people in rural eastern Colorado want. They want the parents to be in first position when it comes to raising their kiddos. And I think it's made loud and clear all across this country. I've had people tell me this from my district. The state doesn't raise my children. I raise my children. So I urge a yes vote on this simple amendment. So simple. To just say, you know what, if you want to opt out, we'll opt out.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before us is the passage of Amendment L041. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The noes have it. L041 is lost. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. So, moving into Part 6 of this bill, where we talk about where it talks about social emotional learning, I have a concern. So this is one of those areas in education that is hotly contested. Whether social emotional learning is a good way forward in terms of teaching our kids. And people are very split on the process of determining curriculums that are best suited for ensuring that our next generation is well educated. I have some resources here that just point to the divide, that point to the debate around this, the history of social emotional learning, where it comes from. It really is founded in particular idea set that not all Coloradans share. Hence why I was elected in my district and not someone else, because not everyone shares that particular ideology. And so what I'd like to do is ask that we consider removing social emotional learning as the standard by which all curriculums are judged. This program would encapsulate much within our state. And if we're going to establish a particular curriculum and say this is the only way forward, I think that we do our students a disservice. And so I am having an amendment drafted and passed out right now. And so I move amendment L043 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion, and it is displayed. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz. So I'm asking that all of Part 6 be struck so that we are not hamstringing our providers with a particular curriculum set. We're giving them the freedom to choose what kind of curriculum they use, because while some would say social emotional learning is the pinnacle of education, others would hotly contest that. And I think it's important to give people the freedom to choose what kind of curriculum that they are going to present. Thank you.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Part 6 is just codifying the authority for home visiting programs, and it doesn't have to do with preschool. This is just codifying the authority for the home visiting programs that we already have.
Any further discussion on Amendment L043? Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm just trying to speak about the concerns, I think, here while the sponsor of the amendment has an opportunity to confer with the amendments desk. Members, I think the intent here the sponsor has of this amendment is to, really correct something that needs to be corrected. And as we continue to navigate on 1295, I think it's important that we consider some of the debate that's going on and just look to the intent of these amendments and the arguments that are being made. Because oftentimes, especially when it comes to standing up a new department, there can be issues that are unforeseen, right? And certainly 1295 is no exception. And so I would just ask, let's beg a little consideration here for some of the arguments that are being made. I appreciate it.
Any further discussion on L043? Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to make sure, as we have this important debate about the youngest of our children, that we knew what line 15 through 25, as we strike it, what was in that language. So I'll turn to page 122. And I'll look at page 15 through 27. Part 6, Social Emotional Learning Programs. This is 26.5-3-601, Legislative Declaration. The General Assembly finds and declares that A, young children from low-income families often struggle to achieve the same outcomes as their peers from higher-income families because they rarely have access to the same supports, particularly those supports with a focus on the development of social emotional skills like emotion regulation, pro-social communication, and problem solving. We're talking about 3- and 4-year-olds. I would say every nurturing mother, regardless of income status, is there, and father, and parental unit, to help those kids develop. Now, Part B says exposure to poverty, a stressful home environment, and delays in the development of behavioral and academic skills at a young age are strong predictors of later academic. And the next word is challenges. We're talking about 3-year-olds. So I see that my bill sponsor wants this eliminated, but I need to continue here with pages 123 through 127. So if you'll allow me. Challenges, health issues, behavior problems, substance abuse, lower educational attainment, lower rates of employment, teen parenthood, and likely recurrence of these risk factors for the next generation of children. At 3 years old, 4 years old. Part C, research demonstrate that the opportunity to support positive development experiences during early childhood use evidence-based interventions that support sensitive and responsive caregiver-child interactions and are linked to children's academic and social competence. And Part D, helping teachers and parents learn when and how to use their evidence-based interventions has demonstrated reductions in parental depression, increase in parental self-confidence, increases in positive family communication and problem solving, increases in child's appropriate cognitive problem solving strategies, and the use of pro-social conflict management strategies with peers. Reductions in conduct problems at home and conduct problems in school that often lead to suspension and expulsion. Increases in children's positive effect and cooperation, positive interaction with peers, school readiness, and engagement with social activities. 2A. Remind you, this is part 6 of a legislative declaration. The General Assembly finds, therefore, that it is in the best interest of the state to authorize the department to implement proven. Well, here's why we need that metadata right here, ladies and gentlemen. Evidence-based, 2-generation prevention programs. So here's the thing. I think they're going to want 2 generations of data. Wow. Maybe I'm wrong and the bill sponsors can clarify that, because I know. Oh, and then we have this thing called AI, artificial intelligence. How does that play into the metadata that's going to, I don't know, maybe I'm confused. Analyze 2-generation prevention programs to teach teachers and parents strategies and skills to connect with all children, especially those who demonstrate challenging behaviors. Hell, that's all children. All of us little kiddos present challenging behaviors when we're little. That's the challenge of parenting. And to provide programming to children to help them learn problem solving and emotional control skills. The goals of providing these programs are to strengthen teacher-child and parent-child relationships and promote child behavioral change, including self-regulation and decreased aggressive behavior and impulsivity. Well, the state and the department are going to solve all these problems, I suppose, with this particular legislation. At least that's part of the intent. Well, we know that couldn't be farther from the truth. Families, parents, people, communities have the greatest impact on children and should continue to have the greatest impact on children and their young lives. And at ages 3 and 4, let me tell you, the most important influencer is the mother and the father. That is the framework of what we should be investing in. Let's invest in the parents, not the state and another department, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Because the state's going to solve your problems, Colorado. The state. That sounds a bit Orwellian to me. Now, I think I'm going to turn it over to the Assistant Minority Leader. I apologize for not finishing this. If I'm asked to finish it, I will continue reading. Thank you.
Actually, I have Representative Michael St. Genet in the queue first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What an honor to serve with you,
Such an honor to serve with you,
especially on
Representative.
this historic day. Before I was in the legislature, part of the work that I did is I was a positive behavioral instructional support teacher, so PBIS. PBIS is all about social and emotional health and well-being. And what I want to say is that this is the most exciting and important part of the legislation that we're talking about. When you hear the words two generation, that doesn't mean mining data from two generations. That means making sure the parents are involved in all of the steps of the learning. So I think that maybe there's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding, because what is being asked for is exactly what this bill will do. We will bring in the parents in the development of the youth, and there is nothing that has more evidence of success than two-gen teaching, social and emotional health, positive behavioral instructional support. I'm a no on this amendment, and please learn and understand what these tools do.
Minority Leader Geithner.
Assistant. Thanks, Mr.
Thank
Chair. So I think we just heard that, this amendment wouldn't necessarily address social emotional, that somehow it addresses the home visit. So just so that we're clear, Part 5 of 1295, which begins on page 108, that Part 5 is titled Colorado Nurse Home Visitor Program, which absolutely I have grave concerns with. But Part 6, which is what this amendment is addressing, that begins on page, as I scroll through here, I think it's like 121, 122, and that is, I may have passed it here. It starts on page 122. That is Part 6, and Part 6 is clearly labeled Social Emotional Learning Program. So the amendment is correct. While there's 485 pages here, it's certainly not uncommon that you will find certain words multiple places throughout the bill. So I wouldn't begin to argue that you're only going to find social emotional learning strictly within Part 6. I suspect that you'd probably find it peppered throughout all of 1295, but the section, Part 6, which is what this amendment is getting to, is absolutely spot on, and it does have directly to do with the social emotional learning programs. Like I said, that begins on page 122. I know for the millions of you that are listening at home, you can click on the bill and you can actually go to page 122 and see where social emotional learning programs are in the bill. So again, I just wanted to come up here and make sure that we had that clarification on the record, and then to also renew my support for this amendment and the idea of striking this section of the bill, this entirety of Part 6. So thank you, members, and I urge a yes vote.
Any further discussion on Amendment L043? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L043. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The noes have it. Amendment L043 is lost. To the bill. Is there any further discussion? Representative Hanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I came a little late to the meeting. Colorado's crime wave hit me yesterday, and so I missed the opening elements of this. So I'm playing catch up, but I was a little struck that 485-page bill wasn't in our files, and the reason it's not in our files is because it's too big to put in our files, and yet we are willing to put 485 pages into Colorado's revised statutes. So it seems to me we have a little bit of a problem here, and if we haven't all seen it on paper, I don't think we ought to be passing it. I think that goes back to a federal argument I've heard. But I do think for the people of Colorado, we ought to get into several pages of this, so at least if they feel like printing it out at home, they can look at it, make the decision of what parts they like and what parts they don't. And the beauty of it is the first 8 pages here lay out exactly where you can find the conforming amendments, the transfer of Department of Education programs, and et cetera. A bill for an act concerning the Department of Early Childhood and in connection therewith establishing the duties of the Department of Early Childhood and the Executive Director of the Department, relocating early childhood programs from the Departments of Human Services and Education to the Department of Early Childhood and creating the Colorado Universal Preschool Program. Bill summary. Note, this summary applies to this bill as introduced and does not reflect any amendment that may be subsequently adopted. If this bill passes third reading in the House of Introduction, a bill summary that applies to the re-engrossed version of this bill will be available at http://leg.colorado.gov. Operations of the Department of Early Childhood. The bill establishes the powers, functions, and responsibilities of the Department of Early Childhood Department and the Executive Director of the Department, Executive Director, in overseeing and administering early childhood and family support programs and services. The bill relocates most programs from the Department of Human Services and the Department of Education to the department effective July 1, 2022. The authority to operate a preschool program transfers July 1, 2023. The department may enter into memoranda of understanding and interagency agreements to allow the Department of Human Services and the Department of Education to continue operating programs as necessary to accomplish the transfer of programs, personnel, property, records, information systems, and funding to the department over time without interruption of service. Any existing contracts, claims, and liabilities that pertain to the transferred programs and functions transferred to the department. The rules that pertain to a particular program or function that is transferred to the department remain in effect and apply to the department and to persons or entities affected by the programs and the functions until the executive director repromulgates the rules. The department is authorized to accept, use, and administer federal money made available for the purpose of early childhood programs and services operated by the department. Department rules, pages 9 through 13. The bill authorizes the executive director to promulgate rules for the department and the programs administered by the department. The executive director must convene a 15-member Rules Advisory Council, parenthetical council, to provide consultation and advice with regard to the rules of the department and the programs administered by the department. The bill establishes the membership of the council to include a variety of persons who have experience with programs and services. The bill requires the department to exercise specified functions, and the bill specifies principles the department must follow in exercising the functions, pages 19 through 24. Develop and implement a single unified electronic application for families to use to apply for all publicly funded early childhood programs and services the department administers. The application must be functional by July 1, 2023 for purposes of the Colorado Universal Preschool Program, parenthetical preschool program, pages 24 and 25. Further, must work with local coordinating organizations, state and local agencies, and program providers to collect, share, manage, use, and protect data pertaining to programs and services. The department must regularly inform the public of progress made in improving the delivery of programs and services, pages 25 through 29. Contract with a public or private entity to independently evaluate the department's governance and performance after the first 3 years of operation and to evaluate early childhood programs that were not transferred to the department and recommend whether to transfer those programs. By November 1, 2025, the independent evaluator must submit the report to the governor, the Early Childhood Leadership Commission, and committees of the General Assembly, pages 29 through 31. Collaborate with other state departments to prepare an annual report concerning transitioning and implementing programs and services and cross-agency collaboration. The department shall include the report in its annual hearing pursuant to the, quote, state measurement for accountable, responsive, and transparent, parenthetical, smart government act, page 31 through 33. Local coordinating organization, pages 33 through 52. The bill directs the department to solicit applications from local public entities and nonprofit organizations to serve as local coordinating organization, parenthetical LCOs, in communities throughout the state. The department must review the applications and, to the extent possible, select an LCO for every community in the state. If there is an area for which an LCO is not selected, the department will serve as the LCO until an organization is selected. An LCO is responsible for working with the families, program, and service providers and local governments in the community and with the department to increase access to, coordinate, and allocate funding for program and service providers in the community. The bill specifies the responsibilities of the LCO, including the requirement to adopt a community plan, parenthetical plan, subject to approval by the department to address specified issues, including assisting families in applying for programs and services, recruiting and ensuring a mixed delivery system of public and private preschool providers, allocating funding among providers based on parent choice to maximize funding to meet community needs for programs and services, supporting increased recruitment and retention of individuals in the early care and education workforce, securing additional local resources and funding for programs and services, and providing transparency concerning the amount of money available for and used to support programs and services. Page 4. The LCO must submit the proposed plan to the department, and the department may require revisions before approving the plan. The department shall enter into a coordinator agreement with each LCO that specifies the duties of the LCO in implementing the plan. Other responsibilities the LCO must meet, including responsibilities concerning the preschool program, performance expectation that the LCO is to meet, and the duties of the department to support and assist the LCO. The term of the initial coordinator agreement is 3 years, and subsequent agreements must have 3 to 5 year terms. At the conclusion of a coordinator agreement, the department must solicit and review LCO applications for the community and may select the same or new organization to serve as the LCO. The bill specifies the department's duties concerning LCOs, including annually reviewing each LCO's performance. Transfer of Department of Human Services programs. Effective July 1, 2022, the bill transfers the authority for the following programs and functions from the Department of Human Services to the department. The programs are relocated within the bill without substantive change except as noted. Early childhood councils, parenthetical pages 52 to 63. Family resource centers, pages 63 to 71. The Child Abuse Prevention Trust Fund, pages 71 to 80. The Child Care Services and Substance Use Disorder Treatment Pilot Program, pages 81 to 83. Early Intervention Services for Infants and Toddlers, pages 83 to 108. The Colorado Nurse Home Visitor Program, pages 108 to 122. Social Emotional Learning Programs, grant programs, pages 122 to 128. The bill codifies the Social Emotional Learning Programs grant program currently operated by the Department of Human Services as the Incredible Years program to provide grants to operate programs for teachers and parents and directly for young children. The department shall administer the grant program in collaboration with an implementation partner that the department selects. The bill specifies the duties of the implementation partner, the grant's application requirements, and the MEET program and curriculum requirements a grantee must meet. The Early Childhood the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation Program, pages 128 to 137. Emergency Relief Grant Programs, pages 137 to 158. The Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, parenthetical CCCAP, pages 153, pages 159 to 183. The bill requires the department, after consulting with county departments of human and social services and child care providers, and by July 1, 2025, to develop a calculation for provider rates that more accurately reflects the cost of child care while complying with federal law and procedures. The bill authorizes the executive director to adjust the percentage of the federal poverty rate used to determine eligibility for child care assistance in order to align eligibility across early care and education programs to the extent allowed by federal law. Effective July 1, 2023, a county shall not require a person who applies for a child care assistance to participate in child support establishment, modification, or enforcement services. Beginning July 1, 2023, a county may give priority for services to a working family over a family enrolled in post-secondary education or workforce training only if the county does not have sufficient funding and has approval for the prioritization from the department. Each county shall pay providers for care in alignment with common private market practices, and the department rules for payment policies must not be based on daily reimbursement must not be based on daily reimbursement rates, and must incentivize providers to promote regular program attendance. The bill requires the executive director to adopt rules pertaining to children who are enrolled in both CCCAP and the preschool program to ensure funds may be blended or braided at the state and local levels, and eligibility and authorization for services are aligned to the extent practicable. Each county must enter into an annual performance contract with the department with regard to implementing CCCAP. Quality improvement initiatives for early childhood care and education programs, pages 225 through 233, Colorado Infant and Toddler Quality and Availability Grant Programs, page 233 to 237, Child Care Licensing, pages 237, pages 237 to 330. I'm going to repeat that. That's over 100, almost 100 pages. Pages 237 to 330. The bill transfers from the Department of Human Services to the department the authority for licensing child care centers, family child care homes, and other facilities generally providing less than 24-hour care for children. The licensing authority is transferred without substantive change except for the creation of a public preschool provider license that is focused on ensuring the health and safety of children in public preschool classrooms. The authority for licensing residential and day treatment facilities and child placement agencies remains in the Department of Human Services. Early Childhood Workforce Development, pages 330 to 335. The bill requires the department to create a plan for recruiting, training, and retaining a well-compensated, page 6, well-compensated, well-prepared, high-quality early childhood workforce and specifies the issues to be addressed. The department must make the plan publicly available on the department's website and submit a copy of the Early Childhood Leadership Commission, the Governor's Office, and committees of the General Assembly. The department must collaborate with other state departments to periodically review and assess the implementation of recruitment, preparation, professional development, and retention initiatives for the early childhood workforce. Transfer of Department of Education programs. Effective July 1, 2022, the bill transfers responsibilities concerning early childhood workforce development, including the Professional Development Information System, from the Department of Education to the department. Effective July 1, 2023, the bill moves the authority to operate a statewide preschool program from the Department of Education to the department. Colorado Universal Preschool Programs, pages 183 to 225. The bill creates the Colorado Universal Preschool Program to provide 10 hours per week of preschool services for children in the year preceding eligibility for kindergarten, including children with disabilities, parenthetical universal preschool services. Preschool services for all 3-year-old children with disabilities and a limited number of other 3-year-old children who are in low-income families or meet qualifying factors. Preschool services for children younger than 3 years of age in limited circumstances, and additional hours of preschool services in the year preceding eligibility for kindergarten. Parenthetical additional preschool services for children who are in low-income families or meet qualifying factors. The department shall administer the preschool program, which will begin enrolling students for the 2023/2024 school year. The department shall work with the LCOs to make available throughout the state a mixed delivery system of public and private preschool providers to accommodate parent choice. The executive director shall, by rule, establish quality standards as described in the bill that preschool providers must meet. The department shall collaborate with the Department of Education through an interagency agreement to ensure all 3- and 4-year-old children with disabilities are served in accordance with federal and state requirements for children with disabilities. The department shall implement a process of continuous evaluation and improvement for preschool providers and contract with an independent evaluator to measure the preschool program's success in improving the overall learning and school readiness of children who are served in the preschool program. The department shall publicly communicate the evaluation results and consider the results in reviewing the preschool quality standards, recruiting, training, and retaining a high-quality early childhood workforce, and establishing goals for the preschool program. The department shall annually establish per-child rates for universal preschool services for children 3 years of age and in limited circumstances younger, and additional preschool services. The department shall by rule establish the formulas for determining the per-child rates, taking into account the cost of providing preschool services and variations in the cost resulting from regional differences and circumstances and from characteristics of children who enroll in the preschool program. In addition to distributing preschool program funding based on the per-child rates, the department may distribute funding to preschool providers to achieve specified purposes. The department shall distribute the funding to preschool providers throughout the fiscal year based on preschool enrollment, and each preschool provider shall use the funding only to pay the costs of providing preschool services. In allocating the preschool funding, the department must prioritize funding for universal preschool services, including services for children with disabilities, preschool services for 3-year-old children with disabilities, and preschool services for other 3-year-old and, in limited circumstances, younger children up to a specified amount. The department may then allocate funding for additional preschool services, first for children who are in low-income families and meet qualifying factors, and for specified purposes. Each preschool provider that is a school district or charter school shall provide preschool and special education local contribution amounts that are based on the school district's local share of 50% of its per pupil revenues and the number of children enrolled by the school district or charter school in preschool for the 2022/23 fiscal year, and the number of 3-year-old children with disabilities that the school district or charter school annually enrolls in preschool. The department shall decrease the amount of preschool funding distributed to each school district and charter school based on the amount of the school district's or charter school's local contributions. Funding for the preschool program is paid from money appropriated from the preschool program's cash fund, parenthetical fund, which consists of a portion of the taxes collected on sales of cigarettes and other tobacco and nicotine products, and other amounts that the General Assembly transfers or appropriates to the fund. For the 2023/24 fiscal year and each fiscal year thereafter, the General Assembly is required to transfer to the fund an amount equal to the state share of total program attributable to preschool enrollment for the 2022/23 fiscal year, increased annually by the rate of inflation, plus an amount necessary to ensure that all 3-year-old children with disabilities who are enrolled in the preschool program are funded at the per-child rate for the applicable fiscal year. Beginning in January of 2024, the department shall include in its annual, quote, SMART Act, unquote, report specified information concerning implementation of the preschool program and post the information on the department's website. Conforming amendments, pages 335 to 485. The bill makes substantive and technical conforming amendments to address the relocation of programs and functions to the department, including recreating the provisions for licensing residential and day treatment facilities and child care placement agencies by the Department of Human Services. So that is the 7-page summary for the people at home that, and frankly for the people, the members here that didn't have a hard copy of this. I'm still a hard copy guy. I guess I'm not too big on the scrolling up and down. But here we are. A few of us have hard copies, so I thought I would share that with you. I also want to share for the people at home the revised fiscal note that replaces the fiscal note dated March 21, 2022. And the summary of the fiscal impact: the bill establishes the duties for the Department of Early Childhood, moves existing programs to the new department, and establishes the new universal preschool program. The bill shifts state expenditures to the new department, increases net state expenditures, and makes several state transfers. Appropriation summary. For fiscal year 2022/23, the bill requires an appropriation of $290,084 to multiple state agencies. It also requires numerous adjustments to appropriations for multiple state agencies that result in no net charge to total appropriations. Fiscal note status. The revised fiscal note reflects the introduced bill amended by the House Education and Appropriation Committees. Table 1, I want to go through budget year, fiscal year 2022/2023. Total expenditures, $290,084. Out year, fiscal year 2023 to 2024. That $290,000 has risen to $167 million, $133,954 to be precise. For the purpose of the fiscal note and what we read as legislators, and for the good of the public, I'll read the fiscal note summary of legislation. The bill establishes duties for the Department of Early Childhood, parenthetical DEC, moves programs to the new department, and creates new universal preschool programs. Beginning July 1, 2022, the DEC is responsible for administering the current responsibilities of the Office of Early Childhood in the Department of Human Services. The current duties in the Colorado Department of Education related to early childhood workforce development, and beginning in fiscal year 2023/24, the Colorado Universal Preschool Program. The bill transfers existing rules, staff, property, documents, records, information systems, contracts, claims, and liabilities related to those programs to the DEC, establishes operating principles for the DEC, and authorizes the DEC to utilize administrative law judges, accept federal funds, and enter into agreements with other state agencies. The bill specifies minimum data to be collected and provides for data collection and management, and adds that employees of the DEC are mandatory reporters for child abuse or neglect. Rulemaking. The bill authorizes the executive director to promulgate rules and creates a 15-member Rules Advisory Council to support rulemaking. The council may receive per diem and reimbursement of expenses unless covered by the member's employer. If the executive director does not follow the council's recommendations, the director must provide a written explanation for the decision. Independent evaluation. By November 1, 2025, the DEC must contract for an independent evaluation of the department's performance, including reviewing transition from current agencies to the DEC and whether other programs should be moved to the DEC. The DEC, in collaboration with other state agencies, must annually report on the progress made and challenges encountered by the DEC and the administration of services for students with disabilities in its SMART Act hearing. So I will go through one more time programs moving to DEC. The duties that are relocated from CDHS to the DEC include the following: Early Childhood Councils and Family Resource Centers, the Child Abuse Prevention Board and Trust Fund with 2 additional members on the board, Early Intervention Services, the Child Care Services and Substance Use Disorder Treatment Pilot Program, which is also extended to 2028, the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation Program, all the Early Childhood Emergency Relief Grant Programs, the School Readiness Quality Improvement Program, the Infant and Toddler Quality and Availability Grant Program, Colorado Shines Quality Rating and Improvement System, Child Care Licensing and Credentialing Systems, and Colorado Nurse Home Visitor Program. The bill also codifies the Social Emotional Learning Program, which is currently operated by the CDHS as the Incredible Years Program, and 3 current family strengthening home visiting programs: Safe Care, Colorado Community Response, Healthy Steps. It also creates a public preschool provider license that focuses only on health and safety aspects that are not regulated by another state or federal agency. The bill moves the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, CCCAP, from CDHS to the DEC and makes several changes, including modifying the method for calculating provider rates from a market rate study with a tiered system of reimbursements to a calculation that reflects the cost of providing care, requiring that the DEC convene a working group of counties to discuss the calculations, allowing the DEC to adjust in rule the percent of federal poverty level that determines eligibility for child care assistance in order to align eligibility across early care and education programs, prohibiting a county from requiring that a person apply for child care assistance to participate in child support or enforcement services beginning July 1, 2023, allowing a county to give a priority to a working family over one enrolled in post-secondary education or workforce training only if the county does not have sufficient funding and has DEC approval, requiring that the DEC adopt rules for children in both CCCAP and the new preschool program, and requiring that counties enter into an annual performance contract with the DEC to implement CCCAP. So here's what we got. We got several more pages of this. And bottom line up front, I would say to the people at home, look at the revised fiscal note. Look at this bill, House Bill 22-1295, printed out. The out year of fiscal year 23-24 is an expenditure of $167 million. There's a lot of money moving around. I think everybody in here warranted a printout copy of it, and we ought to be going through it line by line.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And actually, thank you, because I think within what we just heard, there were some really important things that we need to talk about. Folks, this is a big bill. We've heard that it's a big bill. I may have mentioned to somebody at one point, if you drop a 500-page bill on my filing cabinet and I pet it and give it a name, then probably I've developed a relationship with this. This right here is a major change, and we know that it's a major change. We also know that it's trying to incorporate about 400 different things into one. And as we do that, I think what we look for are some of the hitches to the giddy-up. We look for where are some of the things in this bill, in the structure of this bill, that create things that we want to pay a lot more attention to. And I would like to thank the sponsors truly for listening to a lot of those concerns and realizing that we've done a lot of amendments and modifications here, but there are likely more to come and more debate that'll go on over in the Senate. But I'd like to call out something there because you just heard a bit of the reading of the legislative declaration of this bill. And one of the pieces, if we move into the bill on page 9, talks about the powers and duties of the executive director. Folks, we're very used to sort of the bureaucracy that we live in, that truly the legislature promulgates. But what we try to do is we try to create fences and we try to create swim lanes for the things that need to be done. And in this, I would suggest that there's a lack of swim lanes and fences, because what we really have is an executive director that will have a advisory panel. but then have all of that decision-making authority to themselves. We've heard it when we've discussed bills in the past with different departments where we have left the ultimate decision to one singular person. And that's a challenge. And it's not that we need more bureaucracy, but it's what we really need to make sure of is that there is not just an advisory panel, but that panel has the authority to say, these are the rules we want. And the director is the person who carries them out. And if you can imagine that, that's a different structure than what we see in this bill. What we see in this bill is a governance that basically says one person will take in all of this information, whether it be from the members of that panel or other sources or other things, and then it comes to one person to make that decision rather than a body, much like us, that comes to a decision and a debate, makes a decision, and then asks the director to carry it out. Those are very different things. And I think that that's something that truly I appreciate the sponsors looking at what the governance structure of this looks like, because I think it's important. I think it's important when, if we're creating an entirely new department, we need to be focused on making sure that it is something that can be durable, and durable in a way that doesn't depend on that one person. So that's number one. The other piece is truly when we get down to the effect that this has on how programs are moving. We've had this relationship between the state's interest and the county's interest. We've had the state's interest as this umbrella and a budget and a finance model that feeds money to the counties to take care of issues on the most local level. CCAP is one of those places. And so one of the concerns is that if all these decisions now are going to be made on the state level, and the counties are still responsible for providing a lot of service, especially through CCAP, what happens? What happens when the money is not enough to cover the expense and the counties are now carrying out something the state told them to do, but they don't have the money to do it? And I think that that's a really important piece. This has to do with the relationship of how human services has been a product of a collaboration between the state and the counties. And I think what we really need to make sure is that we memorialize and honor what that relationship looked like, make sure the counties have an appropriate place for input to the executive director and a board of governance, and then also have assurance that they will not be having to pick up the financial pieces when the money runs out. Thank you very much.
Any further, Representative Sirota?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the interest and attention to the governance model that has been laid out in the bill. We have had months and months and months and months of very deliberate conversation around this particular piece, which is following the unanimously approved recommendations of the ECLC, which does include representation from the counties, which does include representation from human services. Everyone unanimously agreed to those recommendations, which included this particular governance model, which is actually not unlike about half of our state agencies. Half of our state agencies have a rulemaking board, and about half of those agencies, and I have the list, I won't read it for you, but if you want to come see it, I'll show you which agencies have that rulemaking board and which have more of an advisory board. But we were very intentional about setting up an advisory rules committee, a rules advisory committee that was representative of all the voices that need to be at the table. So it is quite inclusive of counties, it is quite inclusive of our school districts, but it also brings in voices from parents, voices from community providers, and ensures that we are really taking into account and lifting up some of those voices who maybe have been left out of the process for a number of years, making sure that we are truly crafting a mixed delivery system that can be responsive to the needs of our varied communities around the state. I will also say that whether you have an advisory rules council or you have a rulemaking board, the Administrative Procedures Act is the same. And so the rulemaking process is the rulemaking process, whether it goes through one entity or another. And there are many places along the way for changes to be made, for concerns to be raised. But even before we get to that rulemaking process, we have laid out a number of strategies for the department to work with, in particular, our counties around CCAP rate setting and things like that, so that there are going to be so many opportunities for this collaborative engagement. Because as the counties are extensions of the state, it is critical that we work collaboratively together, and I don't think that there is any intention from anybody's part not to do that. I lost my train of thought. Oh, but I also want to say that we do also have laid out in the bill that over the course of 3 years, an independent party will do a review and assessment of a number of things for the department, but observing how is governance working, how are our MOUs working, and interagency agreements working, how is this governance structure working, and those results will be presented to the General Assembly and the JBC and the ECLC so that we will all have the opportunity to review if and how this is working. All that said, we are continuing to engage with our counties, and we will continue. The door remains open. We are continuing to have discussions, and I anticipate that we have probably some amendments that we have agreed upon when it comes to governance and trying to further refine and clarify the role of counties in this process that will probably be addressed in the Senate. But those conversations are ongoing.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, it's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the ongoing conversation, because I think that's probably when we make our best policy, is when the door's open and we keep talking. Part of what that governance structure that I mentioned that we're talking about is in some ways sort of the worst case scenario, right? Of not how we govern, but planning for that. And that's why I brought up the financial piece, because as we look at this, I think my focus certainly was when this first started being talked about, we're pulling all these pieces from other departments, and it was my desire or my request that every time we're talking about pulling a piece out of another department, that we pull those FTE and we pull those dollars, and that truly we make that transition. And so that's my concern. I appreciate your words, and I truly appreciate that what we're looking at is how those dollars to the counties are considered, so that the counties are not left holding the bag if there is a decision made on that executive level that comes down. So I appreciate that very much, reiteration of that concern, and I will look forward to see what happens in the Senate.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1295? Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's a big bill, and I am wanting. Are you ready? Okay.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I missed the remarks from the Minority Leader, but as we look at the governance structure itself, this is a new department and something that certainly should always maintain, and I've advocated for it before, and I know others in this chamber have that idea of local control, right? Because local control speaks volumes to those that a governance model or a governing board or any entity of government knows specifically about their constituency, the members in their community, and so on and so forth. So with that, I move L039, and I ask that it be displayed.
All right, that is a proper motion, and it is properly displayed. Assistant Minority Leader Geithner, tell us about your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so, members, what L039 does is it requires, in the process for informing the nominations for those that will sit in some of these leadership positions subsequently to the new board that's being formed initially. Actually, it may just be easy if I read it, but it says it says following the initial appointments to the council for subsequent appointments, the executive director shall solicit nominations for appointees from the local coordination organizations. If the executive director does not appoint an individual nominated by a local coordination or coordinating organization, the executive director shall provide a written explanation to the nominating organization explaining the rejection of the nomination. So ultimately what I'm trying to get at here, folks, is that as the board develops over time, it needs to be reflective of the community in terms of who it is hoping to advocate for, speak for, represent, or other. And so that's what this does. And so I would appreciate your support on L039.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L039? Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having no one discuss the amendment with me, I'm not sure that there is an issue wanting, public engagement with, who is on the board, but I'm not sure that we need to add some administrative burden to the executive director to do this thing. I have no idea, how many applications there would be or appointments. So I'm going to ask for a no vote, but I'm happy to continue to talk about transparency with the executive director.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. This is a key point of local control. And we keep hearing about how important local control is on issue after issue, bill after bill. A common refrain that both sides of the aisle constantly drumbeat that this is a critical issue. This is local control. This is ensuring that the local people have that ability to get someone appointed, and if not, knowing why not. This is a very, very important. I urge an aye vote.
Assistant Minority Leader McKean. Geithner.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I play all roles today. No, I'm kidding. So we just heard from the sponsor of the bill of 1295 that this may create administrative burden. Members, it's 485 pages. I think the administrative burden was created in the policy itself. This is just simply saying that, if we are going to have advocates out of certain regions or areas of the state of Colorado, well, then certainly they should come from that local community. And if they aren't selected once nominated, well, then the nominating board should clearly know why their nomination was rejected. This is good governance. And so I would urge a yes vote on L039.
Any further discussion on L039? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L039. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The noes have it. L039 is lost. To the bill. Any further discussion on Bill 1295? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 22-1295. As amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it. House Bill 22-1295 is adopted as amended. Yes. A brief recess. We're going to take a quick recess. Committee of the Whole is now coming back to order. Do I just go into the next bill?
1272.
Hey, Mr. Shebel, will you please read the title of House Bill 22-1272?
House Bill 1272 by Representatives Gonzalez Gutierrez and Benavidez, also Senator Gonzalez and Rodriguez, concerning the repeal of the provision awarding a defendant attorney fees in a tort action when the case is dismissed on motion of the defendant prior to trial.
Assistant Majority Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
I move House Bill 1272.
To the bill. Speaker Pro Tem Benavidez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill is removing section of a statute 1317-201, which deals with 12B motions and the award of attorney's fees. We do have an amendment, though, to this, which we will change it significantly. So perhaps Representative Byrd could be acknowledged to move the amendment.
Representative Byrd.
We need it for the display. Okay, we need the packet. I go.
Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just want to go over briefly what this bill does. This is about access to justice. Access to justice should be available for all Coloradans, not just those who have the financial ability to pay the other side's attorney's fees. We really do think it is unfair to punish individual plaintiffs seeking to establish new law without similar consequences for defendants who file losing motions. While every state and the federal judiciary has Rule 12B, Colorado is the only one that we're aware of with this fee shifting provisions. Members, I do ask for your support of House Bill 1272. I am going to turn the mic over.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
So yes, members, I move Amendment L002 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L002 has been properly moved and properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I first want to thank the bill sponsors and the proponents of this legislation for their willingness to take a look at this. And really, we want to protect people's ability to bring cases of first impression that are brought in good faith. And sometimes our law hasn't evolved to a point where the existing law would recognize a claim that somebody might be bringing. And in those cases, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person's claim doesn't have merit. It could very much have merit. There could be a wrong or a harm that we are trying to fix. But existing law doesn't create a basis for that claim to be brought. And we don't want plaintiffs in those situations to be penalized for bringing those types of claims. So with respect to other types of 12B motions where people didn't file in the right jurisdiction or didn't join the appropriate plaintiffs, those I think it's proper to still shift fees back to the plaintiff. But here we narrow this to allow good faith, non-frivolous claims to not have fees be shifted back to the plaintiff in the case of a dismissal. So I urge your support for this amendment.
Any further discussion on Amendment L002? Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Byrd. In reading the amendment, this was my first time to read it, and I actually quite like what you've written here. I think it's important that when it's a non-frivolous claim that we don't actually prevent the filing of the claim for attorney's fees back. I know that it was a very robust discussion in House Judiciary, but this is something where if you're put in harm's way and you're the defendant, that just to be able to, and I want to make sure I'm stating this correctly, it's the good faith, non-frivolous claim part that you would still be able to then go back and use 12B for. Is that correct?
Representative Byrd.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this allows it prevents the shifting of fees back to the plaintiff in those cases, but it doesn't bar a 12B motion.
Okay, thank you. I like
Any
it.
further discussion on Amendment L002? Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the amendment. It goes a long way towards addressing a lot of the concerns I have with the bill. I don't think it goes quite far enough, but because it still has, who decides what's a good faith and non-frivolous claim, and that itself can end up being a pretty good, long, fun time in court. I'll have more to talk about the bill itself, but this is a good amendment. It is a good amendment. I appreciate it. I thank you, and I'll support the amendment, but not the bill.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you on a very historical day.
It's an honor to serve with you, Representative Catlin.
It's a historical day for this body and a historical day for you. Congratulations, sir. I come down in support of this amendment. The bill, I'm not lawyer enough to really take a look and figure out which sections of the law and all those things. But I am here to say that this amendment helps me understand the bill much better, and I would support this amendment. I'd recommend a yes vote.
Any further discussion on L002? Speaker Pro Tem Benavides.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, there were several groups in opposition to the bill, and this was an amendment that was negotiated to try to get as many as possible on board. And I can say that the Colorado Medical Society, COPIC, and the Civil Justice League do support this amendment. The amendment does provide there's some language in it that is probably needs a little more wordsmithing from as far as legal standards and things are going, and it will be continued to be worked on in the Senate. We had some discussion with the Senate President this morning. It doesn't address every part of it, but it gets people to the table, all but one big group. So I'm not going to mention them, but I'm sure they've texted you and you know who they are. So as the sponsors feel that this amendment, that we can support this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L002? Seeing none. Oh, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I appreciate the cooperation the sponsors have shown with Representative Byrd on this amendment. I think, and this is my lawyer nerd hat on, it probably, if this amendment is added to the bill, probably needs some more work for a couple of reasons based on the terms that are used and the fact that we don't have defined legal standards for those things. But I also am not somebody who's going to come down and create a problem on something where the sponsors and folks who are concerned have worked so hard. So I've spoken with the sponsors. I think there's still some work to be done on this. But if they can accept it, then I can accept it as well, with the understanding that we'll talk to some of the attorneys who practice in this area and maybe tweak it a little bit more as we move forward. Thank you.
Any further discussion on L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L002 to 1272. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. L002 is adopted to 1272. To the bill. Seeing no further, Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to work with you today.
It is an honor to serve with you, sir.
I rise in opposition to the bill itself. While the amendment goes a long ways to addressing a lot of concerns, it still raises the uncomfortable feeling that this is going to leave open people deliberately bringing lawsuits against municipal governments, against individuals who are serving in those positions based upon, well, essentially, let's just say it plainly, harassment. We've seen that. I've seen that happen. That's happened down in El Paso County more than once. And I think if you take away the option of having the defendant recoup those legal fees, then you're just leaving it open. It provides an incentive for legal harassment, and I urge a no vote.
Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this bill. I think what this bill does is it provides parity for injured plaintiffs, which I think is very important. And I would like to add that this is one of the most restrictive laws in the United States that we have, and we are trying to change that. I also wanted to address the fact that the bill doesn't make any changes to the frivolous or groundless lawsuit statutes. The court still has Rule 11 and CRS 1317-102 as a way to award attorney's fees if a judge rules that the claim was frivolous, which I think is also important. So again, I rise in support. Thank you.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to the bill. While the amendment is greatly appreciated and is helpful, quite frankly, the underlying 12B existing law, I think, draws the right balance. If there is, it has been, I think, effective in sifting the meritorious claims from those without merit. And quite frankly, for the defendant that has had to hire an attorney to defend against meritless claims, this is an issue of basic fairness. 12B as is a proper rule, and so ask for a no vote on this bill.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. I do want to thank the sponsors for working with Representative Byrd for adopting an amendment that I think will mitigate some of the negative impacts here. But I cannot underscore how devastating this bill will be for small business, for people in the public eye. You know, as many of you know, I operated a small business before this, but the chance of getting a frivolous lawsuit filed against you is fairly high. I was fortunate that I never had any kind of legal interaction during my tenure with my shop. However, it was a very common story amongst retailers to have people come in, file slip and fall claims, file frivolous things against them. And I think what a lot of folks don't necessarily realize is what that looks like for a small business. You know, most small businesses don't have an attorney on retainer. They don't have the resources to go to a large firm. Even going to court for a single day can cost thousands and thousands of dollars. In a lot of cases, they're carrying a personal liability umbrella insurance policy, but those insurance policies will go up solely based on the passage of this bill, probably significantly. So this is going to be, at the very best case scenario, a significant increase in liability insurance burdens, which again, a lot of businesses carry not only on the corporate side, but they carry personally. And that's the important thing to understand. In a small retail setting, a lot of your restaurants, even in some cases small franchise operators, are oftentimes named personally in these suits, not just their business. So when you go in and you file a slip and fall claim, you're not just suing, you know, the business entity. You are suing the person who owns that business and their personal assets. So this is creating an enormously stressful situation. If those people are able to carry a personal umbrella of liability insurance, then they may be covered. A lot of times there are some businesses that operate, they don't know that they need to have a personal liability insurance. You don't get handed a notebook on, you know, all the ins and outs of what could go wrong when you open a small business. A lot of times these are people who are tradespeople, spend a life as an auto mechanic, decide to open their own garage. Nobody sits them down and tells them, oh, by the way, if somebody comes in and sues your business, you may be personally liable. So really think through the implications of what we're doing here. All this bill, all the current law does is essentially says that you got some skin in the game. If you come in and you file a lawsuit and you're unsuccessful, you have to help cover the cost to the person that you have cost thousands of dollars. They had to hire an attorney, they had to miss work, they had to miss operating their business, come in and deal with the legal claim. That's a real cost and a real burden to those folks. Right now, the status quo provides a pretty reasonable protection. We're not going for damages. We're not saying that you have to pay a $10,000 fine if you come in and file a lawsuit. What you're saying is they have to cover the cost of the attorney's fee. So members, do think through, in this time of rising inflation, in this time where our small businesses are really struggling, frankly, with rising costs and everything, this is one additional cost. It's either going to be borne in the insurance fees or it's going to be borne in businesses having to shell out thousands of dollars if a case comes through and is unsuccessful. So members, I would strongly urge a no vote.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will follow the same points that my colleague from Jefferson County has made. I will tell you this type of legislation is an attack on small business. Yes, as you try to support one side of litigation by removing the requirement for them to pay the legal fees if they lose in this type of a lawsuit, then what you do is put the burden on small business. Now I'm going to tell you why and make a point that my colleague failed to make, because I'm a small businessman as well. And this is really important, Colorado, because this is an important year. Let me say that again, Colorado. This is really important because this is an important year, post-COVID, as so many businesses have failed and faltered and been left to the annals of history now because they're no longer here. But what happens in small business oftentimes, from a financial standpoint, is you have to personally guarantee your small business. The bank isn't just going to let you say, well, under that structure, we'll just lend you all this money. C, S, Corp, LLC, whatever type of structure you determine to find yourself in as a small businessman, partnership. But what happens when you have to personally guarantee your small business? And then you have to pay these exorbitant legal fees when someone challenges you and loses, but you're left holding the bag. Because the bill sponsors brought this gem to the state capitol. And now, small business, you're going to have to pay the price of those frivolous lawsuits, even when the plaintiff loses. What happens now if you can't cover the legal fees? What happens now? Is that the straw that breaks the camel's back? Well, I will tell you, in many cases, it might be. For the lawyers in this chamber, I don't know what their rates were before they came here, but $200, $300, $400, $500 an hour, ladies and gentlemen, and that's prorated by the minute. For those of us that have had to deal with legal challenges and hire lawyers, they prorate that by the minute, 10 minutes, and I tell you what, you can do the math. So if you want to talk about fair, if you want to talk about fairness, if you want to talk about being fair to Colorado and being fair to small business and being fair, so what is the backbone of the economy? Just ask anybody. Go to your Chamber of Commerce. I wonder if they support this. I wonder if National Federation of Independent Businesses supports this. I don't know. I'd like to know if there's anybody that has that information. Please bring it forward. But I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, just go ahead and throw another loop around the neck of small business and pull on that rope. Just choke it down a little bit more, Colorado. Choke it down a little bit more and see how hard it is for us to breathe in the small business space. And remember who brings these things. to the Gold Dome as we struggle out there in a post-COVID environment trying to get our feet back on the ground.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while I appreciate the amendment, I also rise in opposition to the bill. I just want to portray the negative effects this is going to have on our business community. If you're a business and you're sued for death or personal injury, and you're able to prevail on the motion for summary judgment under 12B, which, by the way, that'd be lack of jurisdiction over the subject matter, lack of jurisdiction over the person, insufficiency of process, insufficiency of service of process, failure to state a claim on which relief can be granted, or failure to join a party, then you still have to pay your own attorney just to get to this point. And so what ends up happening is the plaintiff has actually just used your defense attorney to punish you. So you're still out of pocket thousands of dollars just to get to this point, and yet you've prevailed. You've won the legal action. They were unsuccessful. The plaintiff was unsuccessful, and yet you're still paying your own defense attorney thousands of dollars. And so by striking this language, you wouldn't be able to then go back and ask the plaintiff to cover your attorney's fees, because it was the plaintiff that put you in harm's way of having to hire an attorney, go through the court process of defending yourself. So members, just think about that as you're voting. While the amendment does help out greatly, it doesn't quite get me there. I still think we need to stand up for our small businesses. We need to protect those who are put in harm's way and are found innocent, the ability to recover their attorney's fees. Thank you.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 22-1272 as amended. Representative Woog.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have much to add, but I'm a small business owner. If we talk about equity in here, I think this is the opposite of that. We want to ensure that businesses can survive right now. They are hurting. A lot of them just scratching by. So this is just not equitable at all. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Okay, the question before the committee is the passage of House Bill 22-1272 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. House Bill 22-1272 is passed as amended. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. The committee will now rise and report.
The House will come to order. Mr. Shebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker Pro Tem, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it has under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1272 is amended, 1295 is amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Thank you. Representative Ortiz.
Madam Speaker Pro Tem, I move for the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole.
All right. You have heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. Mr. Shebel, please read the Geithner Amendment, which is L039, to the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Geithner moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Geithner Amendment L039 to House Bill 1295 to show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1295 as amended passed.
Thank you. Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I move the Geithner Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Okay, do you want to explain it? It's displayed already. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So, members, it was what I heard during this was that this would somehow increase the administrative burden. The premise of this amendment is specifically to go ahead and when there is a nomination for leadership on the board, that nomination come from obviously a local element, meaning out of the specific region or area in which that individual would represent. And if for whatever reason the nomination is rejected, well then the commission has to report back as to why they rejected that nomination. So I know it was said that it would somehow increase the administrative burden. I did mention that the bill is 485 pages. That itself is an administrative burden, but having someone that understands the local area, if anything, in my mind, should reduce the administrative burden because they're most intimately familiar. Let's catch things and lead things in this new department that's being stood up from a local emphasis with a local understanding as opposed to the risk, and I'm not saying that this would happen, but the risk of someone from outside of that area coming in, not understanding the people, not understanding the community, and then causing potential problems that need to be fixed and thus increasing the administrative burden. So again, I think the bill itself is the administrative burden. This amendment would decrease the administrative burden and emphasize that need for local control. So I would urge a yes vote on this committee or on this amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I appreciate the concern from the Assistant Minority Leader. I am going to ask for a no vote. I do think that it will increase some administrative burden. I also have a concern about just taking care of the careful balance that we have crafted this advisory council with to make sure that, voices are varied and balanced. And I think when it comes to local voice and you will have a lot of it with the local coordinating organizations, but I think this particular component is not necessary.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of the Geithner Amendment L039 to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Herod is excused. Close the machine with 26 ayes, 36 noes, and 3 excused. The amendment is lost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Mr. Shebel, please read the Luck Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. The first one. The first Luck Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole, which is L041 to House Bill 1295.
Representative Luck moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Luck Amendment L041 to House Bill 1295 to show that said amendment pass and that House Bill 1295 as amended passed.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the first Luck amendment to the Committee of the Whole and ask for a favorable recommendation.
That has been properly moved and displayed. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the first Luck Amendment, L041, to House Bill 1295, to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. For those participating online, Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Please close the machine. With 30 aye votes, 33 no votes, and 2 excused, the first Luck Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. Mr. Shebel, please read the second Luck Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole, which is L043 to House Bill 1295.
Representative Luck moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Luck Amendment L043 to House Bill 1295 to show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1295 as amended passed.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the second Luck amendment to the Committee of the Whole and ask for a favorable recommendation.
Is there further discussion? Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a no vote.
See no further discussion. The question before us is the adoption of the Luck Amendment L043 to House Bill 1295 to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Please close the machine. With 24 aye votes, 39 no votes, and 2 excused, the second Luck Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. Mr. Shebel, please read the first SOPR, I guess there's only one, the SOPR Amendment L040 to House Bill 1295 to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Soper moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Soper and Geithner Amendment L040 to House Bill 1295 to show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1295 is amended passed.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Soper Amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
The Soper Amendment has been properly moved and displayed. Further discussion. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, in 2020, the voters passed Proposition EE with 67% of the vote to tax all nicotine products and e-cigarettes, also known as vape, to fund pre-K here in Colorado. Currently, there's a bill going through the system, HB 1064, which would ban flavored tobacco, e-cigarettes, and vape, which would gut Proposition EE and destroy the main funding mechanism in this bill, which is House Bill 1295. The amendment would delay the effective date of House Bill 1295 by 1 year if House Bill 1064 passes to allow the legislature to identify a sustainable funding source. I'd ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a no vote. As was just stated, the voters expect that we are going to roll out universal preschool in the 23 school year, and that is what we are going to deliver. In addition to the fact that this would delay the implementation of the entire Department of Early Childhood, which is critical to ensuring that we are supporting our community providers as well as our schools who are providing universal preschool and all of our early childhood programs.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Soper Amendment L040 to House Bill 1295 to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Please close the machine. With 25 aye votes, 38 no votes, and 2 excused, the Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. Mr. Schiebel, the question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. I don't believe that's a debatable motion. We're to the report of the Committee of the Whole. I don't. Oh. Okay. All right. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This room has housed I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. This room has housed the State of Representatives for 104 years now, and this motion has never been able to be made before by somebody who is sitting in a wheelchair. And I want to say that I honor very much our chair today. I'm glad that we got to do it, and I would ask for an aye vote.
The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Sandridge votes no. Please close the machine. With 39 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 2 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to labor the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, March 25th.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until Friday, March 25th. That brings us to announcements and introductions. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a House tribute for Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day and ask that it be read at length.
Members, we have a tribute at the desk. Please draw your attention to the well. Mr. Schiebel.
State of Colorado. The House of Representatives convened in the 73rd General Assembly hereby recognizes Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. Prior to World War II, African Americans had very limited roles in the defense of the nation and no role in military aviation. The public outcry from the African American population, African American media, and fair-minded people of all races resulted in the United States War Department extending the opportunity to fly airplanes to all military members regardless of race. The Tuskegee Institute in Alabama was one of 6 African American colleges and universities chosen to participate in the civil pilot training program and helped open the door for the first African American military pilots. By the end of World War II, almost 1,000 African Americans had won their silver wings at the Tuskegee Army Airfield, and nearly half of those African Americans went on to serve the country as combat mission fighter pilots, 19 of which have direct connections in the state of Colorado. The outstanding performance record of the Tuskegee Airmen includes over 1,000 German aircrafts destroyed, received hundreds of air medals, and more than 150 distinguished flying crosses, and a congressional medal in 2007. The Colorado General Assembly, in recognition of the Tuskegee Airmen's heroic efforts, designates the 4th Thursday in March as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. On request of Representatives Leslie Herod, Jennifer Bacon, Nikita Ricks, Iman Judah, and Tony Exum, given this 24th day of March 2022, State Capitol, Denver, signed Alec Garnett, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we get into our comments, because our distinguished guests have been here for a while, we have some members of the Colorado chapter of Tuskegee Airmen Corporation in the gallery, and we'd like to welcome them. Let me introduce them. John Porsche is the president. John Thomas is a treasurer. Vori Moon, retired lieutenant colonel, vice president. Candace Moon, secretary. And the gentleman to your far left, Mr. James Harvey, is the last living Tuskegee Airman in Colorado. He was also known as the first Top Gun.
Representative Bacon.
Thank you. Today, the Black Caucus is proud to recognize the fourth Thursday in March as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. We celebrate this every year. March is a momentous month in the history of Tuskegee Airmen. It is the month in which the first cadets received their silver wings. The first maintenance crew began training at Chinook Field, Illinois, and the first pursuit squadron was activated. Prior to World War II, Black Americans had very limited roles in the defense of the nation and no role in military aviation. But Black Americans were still subjected to Jim Crow laws and segregation in everyday life and in the military.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The path to becoming a pilot, and particularly a military pilot, was severely constrained for Black Americans because of racist views and policies. When President Roosevelt announced in 1938 that he would expand the civilian pilot training program in the U.S., civil rights organizations and leaders amplified demands that Black Americans be included in these programs. In 1940, the advocacy paid off, and the government allowed Black pilots to be trained by the U.S. Army Air Corps. The Tuskegee Airmen Airfield in Tuskegee, Alabama, was chosen as the site for the program. In March of 1942, the first Tuskegee cadets received their silver wings and were the first Black Americans to serve as military pilots in any branch of the United States Air Force.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Ricks.
Thank you. By World War II, more Black Americans were able to receive higher education, and many aspired to serve their country in more meaningful positions in the military. Nearly all the participants in Tuskegee civilian pilot training program were college graduates. By the end of World War II, nearly 1,000 Black Americans earned their civil wings, and many went on to serve in their country in the European and Mediterranean theaters of war as fighter pilots. In Colorado today, the legacy of the Tuskegee program continues to live through the Mile High Flight Club. This club was started in 1996. They educate youth in opportunities in aerospace. They mentor youth. They train outstanding students how to fly. They also share the history of Tuskegee Airmen. And I want to give a shout out to the first Black female fighter pilot who is here from Colorado, Rochelle Kimbrough.
Representative Judah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Tuskegee Airmen flew more than 15,000 sorties, destroyed over 1,000 German aircrafts, received hundreds of air medals, and distinguished flying crosses. The performance record of the Tuskegee Airmen was unprecedented in military aviation history. In 1941, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt visited Tuskegee and took a flight with Chief Flight Instructor Charles Anderson, bringing much-deserved recognition to these extraordinary pilots. The Tuskegee Airmen changed hearts and minds and were an integral part in the eventual integration of the U.S. Armed Forces. They overcame segregation and prejudice to disprove every racist charge that had barred Black Americans from becoming military pilots.
Representative Bacon.
Thank you, members, for standing for the tribute. We just wanted to be able to share in a little bit of the history and joy with you all. You'll notice that you have a book on your desk. This is I Wanted to Be a Pilot by Franklin Macon, and shares his story becoming a Tuskegee Airman. These were generously gifted to us by the folks in the gallery today here. So thank you very much to our guests. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen continue to inspire generations across the nation. Thank you for paying tribute with us today, and we encourage you to say hello to the Colorado chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen Corporation. Thank you all so much.
Representative Carver.
Many thanks to the Black Caucus for bringing this tribute. And I just wanted to take a minute to personally welcome Colonel Harvey and his wife, residents of Colorado Springs. You honor us with your presence. Also, Lieutenant Colonel Moon from Centennial, Colorado. You know, the outstanding courage, valor of the Tuskegee Airmen are a famed part of U.S. military history, extraordinary service and dedication to country in an otherwise difficult time in our history. And so we are so pleased you are with you, that you are able to be with us today. And I would also like to do a shout out. I hope, sir, it's okay, Colonel Harvey, if I pass on that Colonel Harvey will be the Grand Marshal, along with his wife, at the Memorial Day Parade in Washington, D.C., representing our state. So you honor us, sir. You will represent Colorado well, and we're so pleased that you're able to join us this morning for the tribute.
Representative Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Black Caucus for bringing this tribute forward. From one Army aviator to another, I think part of the reason why the Tuskegee Airmen, one of the many reasons, is that they were Army Air Corps before there was an Air Force. And I can't tell, that's right, I can't tell you to this day, when black and brown pilots get together, we still talk about how you blazed that trail and how that trailblazing inspired stories that we still share among us today and that we're motivated and inspired by in service of this nation. So thank you for being here, and thank you to my colleagues for bringing this tribute forward.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, there was a brief time before I joined the Army that I was actually considering going Air Force, and I was in Air Force ROTC, but I came to my senses and figured that Army ROTC was a better path for me. But I'll never forget some of the first lessons and the first books and segments of military history that I certainly was exposed to in college as I pursued my minor in military science was that of the Tuskegee Airmen. And so for the impression that you all and your efforts and everything have made on me as a service member, I can't thank you enough. You have a proud history and you have a proud legacy. But for everything you've done for this nation, I just want to say thank you personally.
Thank you so much to everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for your service. Further announcements and introductions. I have a quick one. Majority Leader Escar will place Representative Harrod on JBC for today only. Further announcements and introductions.
Go ahead.
Representative Lontine and Representative Michelson-Janae.
Members, I thought it was important for us today to recognize the passing of Madeleine Albright. Our former Secretary of State had deep ties to Denver, and I just thought it was really important. I'd like to read a few words of the President's proclamation in honor of her today, and then I think Representative Michelson-Janae might want to say a few things too. But Madeleine Albright was a force. She defied convention and broke barriers again and again. She was an immigrant fleeing persecution, which is pretty relevant today, a refugee in need of safe haven. And like so many before her and after, she was proudly American. As a devoted mother of 3 beloved daughters, she worked tirelessly raising them while earning her doctorate degree and starting her career in American diplomacy. She took her talents first to the Senate as a staffer for Senator Edmund Muskie, followed by the National Security Council under President Carter, and then to the United Nations, where she served as United States Ambassador and ultimately made history as our first woman Secretary of State, appointed by President Clinton. A scholar, teacher, bestseller author, and later accomplished businesswoman, she always believed America was the indispensable nation and inspired the next generation of public servants to follow her lead, including countless women leaders around the world. Madeline was always a force for goodness, grace, and decency, and for freedom.
Representative Michelson Janae.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other component that many of us, probably all of us know, is that she lived in Denver and spent a formative part of her life in Denver. The Corbell School at the University of Denver is named after her father. He was an instructor there. And one of the things that I learned about the former Secretary of State is that she regretted never running for office. She considered it one of the highest things one could do in terms of public service, and that was one of her regrets, is that she never ran for office. So as we run for office, as we do the work that we do, let us remember we can be small and mighty and funny and stern and own our power when we need it.
Thank you to both of you. Further announcements and introductions. Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the great thing about celebrating someone and their history and their role in our lives is you can come and raise a toast to Secretary Albright at the Colorado Beer Distributors Association and the Wine and Spirit Wholesalers of Colorado reception this very evening.
Yes, you can join them and us, because I'm certain Minority Leader McKean will be there as well as I will be there, tonight from 4:30 to 7 p.m. tonight at the Art Hotel. So please go. This is a great group of very fun people.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And after you've been to the cocktail party, you might want to come to eat supper. I want to remind you again that there's a steak fry tonight at the Baptist Church across the road, put on by the Logan County Cattlewomen. 6 o'clock.
Majority Leader Gonzalez and Representative Caraveo.
Thank you.
Oh, I know.
He had me on, let's see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm not Representative Yadira Caraveo.
And I am Representative Yadira Caraveo, but I'm not Assistant Majority Leader Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez.
And neither of us are Senator Julie Gonzalez.
And we're also not Representative Mandy Lindsay. I think we haven't been confused for you yet, but it's coming, I'm sure.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of physical characteristics, and in honor of the Academy Awards this Sunday, we are here to present the award for Most Diminutive State Representative.
You know, these state representatives, they really face a lot of challenges. Well, for example, the podium, it's usually set to tall, but not right now. You know, we have jackets that don't quite fit our arm length. There's that darn podium that we have to put up there when we chair the cow. And so these representatives really are constant reminders that size does not matter when it comes to good legislating.
We do need a lot of step stools. So without further ado, Mr. Schiebel, would you please read the nominees for this award?
Majority Leader Danea Esgar for House District 46. Representative Judy Amabile for House District 13. Representative Emily Sirota for House District 9. Representative Steve Woodrow for House District 6. Speaker Alec Garnett for House District 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll just keep going. I mean, that last nomination is kind of weird, but you looked smaller today in the chair. So, all right. Well, and so without further ado, the winner of Most Diminutive State Representative 2022. It's really hard to open this.
State Representative
Emily Serrata. Come on up. All right, thank you so much. We're obviously not going to win Oscars anytime soon. We tried to recreate something from the Oscars with America Ferrera and Eva Longoria. But in all seriousness, it is not often that a Coloradan is nominated for an Academy Award. We don't have the most thriving film industry in this state, but David Sirota is up for Best Screenplay this Sunday. And so we really just want to wish the Sirotas good luck. Please say hi to Leo and Meryl for us. And hopefully, like next week when you come back, instead of these trophies, we'll be able to fawn over his actual Oscar.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been trying for every day for the last week to come make this announcement for my absence to avoid all of that, but I missed it. So thank you so much for my award, and I am also announcing that I have requested from the majority leader to be absent March 25th through the 28th so that I may go and attend the Academy Awards with my husband, who has been nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
Any further announcements or introductions? Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs, please head directly to committee in LSBA.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess till later today.